Hi, everyone. I'm Donna M Atwood from SEEN, the Spiritual and Extraterrestrial Experiencers Network. And I'm here today to talk about what it's really like to be an experiencer today in the 21st century. And so, really, that begins with an awareness that there is more out there, that there is something conscious, that there's something benevolent. And that's really the first step uh, towards achieving higher dimensional interaction. So, to be an experiencer is to have some sort of interaction, whether you're seeing something, hearing something, sometimes feeling something. You could smell the scent of something. And I do refer to higher dimensional interaction as HDI for short. So, I mean, what does a HDI look like? Well, I can't speak for everybody else. I can tell you what I've been through, and I will definitely share that with you today. But I do think there's a lot of commonalities to being an experiencer, and but I do think that experiencers go through things in different order in different time periods. In other words, step one might be to see something. Step two might be to see more things. For another person, it might be that you hear something and then you see something. That would be the second step. It just depends. Everybody's a little bit different. In my case, it really started with I should say in more recent years, over the last 12 years, because I had some experiences prior to all of this, but that's going to be for another video because it was a totally different situation than what I'm going through these days. But I've had several what I call light bulb moments, and I call them that because it's literally light bulbs. Light bulbs, on off, on off, on off. I've had it where it's happened even where the television has been on off, while the lights are going on and off. But it wasn't scary. It wasn't a poltergeist type of thing. It was just like they were sort of saying that they were excited that something really big was about to happen. So. I was actually worried, though, that they were going to ruin the television. I didn't know if that might hurt it, but it was fine. I also I don't think I've mentioned this before to anybody that I can remember. I actually saw what looked like a stereo speaker, if you can imagine, in my bedroom, right up close to the ceiling of the bedroom. And it was just there, like it was kind of floating there. It was just there. And what happened is I had been asleep, and I woke up, and I only knew it was there because I woke up and I needed to go to the bathroom. So I was wide awake. I look up at this thing, and by this point, I'd had so many different things happen. I just looked up at it, and I just kind of shook my head. And I went to the bathroom, and I came back to bed. I looked up at it again, and I shook my head. They I wasn't upset. I was so tired. I didn't. Yeah, I was just like I didn't want to be bothered with the shenanigans. But they're really just higher dimensional, playful pranks. Is all they are. It was. I have no idea why they did that. I don't know if there was some purpose to that. I told some friends of mine who are also experiencers, and they thought perhaps there had been a greater purpose. And in all honesty, I have learned over the years that they typically have more than one reason, or are accomplishing more than one thing when they do something. They are maybe accomplishing two or three things at one time. So it's my guess. I have no idea. My guess, your guess. Who knows? I couldn't tell you. Let's see. I also felt some footsteps. This is crazy. But this is another high dimensional playful prank, an example. I've had I literally felt footsteps. So again, I'm in bed, and I felt footsteps go across right above my head. So I'm on the pillow. It's right at the top of the bed. It's a king size bed. So I'm trying to look to the side to see if I can see anything. It kind of scared me, but nothing happened. They didn't do anything to me. It was kind of cute, but it did kind of freak me out. And then in recent years, I have received so many channeled messages. I couldn't even begin to tell you how many. At this point, it's pretty much all day long, every day. There's always something kind of going on in the background. But notably, and most notably, I've received messages from, and nobody was more shocked than I was, because I was never really a religious person per se, but I certainly believed. I believe and believed in the past that Jesus Christ, walked on the planet. I believed he was here. I still do believe that he'd been here. But I've heard from ascended masters, including Jesus Christ. So the Christ consciousness, I've heard from the consciousness of Jesus Christ and Abdul Baha, as well as, and this one probably equally freaked me out, was Ra. I heard from Ra of the Law of One. And the first time I heard from Ra, I said, yeah, right. I thought somebody was playing a trick on me, but apparently a lot of people don't believe it's Ra when it's Ra. Of course, I was flipped out by all of these. It's Ascended Masters, Jesus and Abdul Baha. I've heard a couple of times from a mantis being, as in a praying mantis, an insectoid. The first time I heard from him, I was so scared I shut down the channel. I was just terrified. That's all I can tell you. I was so freaked out. And most recently, though, I've heard very recently from an Anunnakian who had some very interesting things to say about maternal mitochondrial DNA. And so we'll get into that another time. But most often I hear from archangels Michael or Michael and Uriel. And I have to say that they are just unconditional in their love and their patience and their guidance and their teachings and the lessons. I can't even tell you how many times that they have lovingly taught me important lessons. There's no other way to say it. I am so profoundly grateful. I have a very close and meaningful relationship with the Angelics. I'm deeply, deeply, profoundly grateful for it. Additionally, I've witnessed a bunch of dancing lights in the sky, the large orbs. I did record it recently with my cell phone. I'm in the process of getting better equipment for these types of CE5 encounters. These are the lights in the sky that we've seen on television. We've seen people from the military, from Pentagon, discuss these. That they move in such a way that that any technology that we have cannot keep up with them. So my experience with these angelic beings of light is, I was told, is what they are, which I take that to be that they are still technology, because if you think about it, even we could be considered a technology in a way. It's just that we're biologically based. But these angelic beings of light have been nothing but loving and helpful. And I feel very, very, very close to them. I have a beautiful relationship with them. I see them very often. I've seen them as my first encounter was about 25 feet away from me for about 50 minutes. I would say exactly 50 minutes, very close encounter. And after that, that's when my consciousness started to raise up, and was a very interesting time in my life. I've also seen them further away, like 50 feet away, like above treetops, or if not above trees, just a little further away. And then, of course, way up in the sky. So, and I see them move all around in different ways, at right angles and all kinds of angles, and zip around. They're very cool. I've also had feathers, as in bird feathers, show up in odd places, including inside the home that I bought, which is where I am now. I had a feather show up in the room, which I'm a little embarrassed to admit this, but I've set up, I don't know why I'm doing this today. I set up a studio, the Scene Studio. I have a light and everything that says Scene on it. I've got a whole room dedicated for recording. And here I am out here in my family room area recording because that's what I've been doing for a while. I guess old habits die hard, right? But before I bought the house, before I put an offer on this house, there was a feather that I saw in the room that is now my scene studio, my recording studio. So that was pretty wild. I knew that was a sign. More recently, I had a bunch of feathers show up on my driveway. And the only reason I went out to look at them is because I was prompted through communication to go outside on the driveway. There were feathers everywhere. I put up a video of it not that long ago, not very many days ago. They were very fresh looking feathers, very young. There was no blood. Didn't look like there had been a big fight. They just were all over. It was just pretty wild, I have to tell you. Let's see. A few years ago, I'm not sure what it was I saw or who I saw, but I had a lady, a woman, who I thought might have been a Palladian, but I'm not sure. She faded in and then she faded back out. She moved away from me as she faded out. She didn't say anything. She just showed herself to me. Kind of freaked me out. I was a little bit afraid, I'll be honest with you. It was, I don't know, four years ago, something like that. Other beings have done that. I had what looked like an angel. So this was pretty kind of hysterical, actually. This was probably about 7 years ago. I had some things happen and I was kind of freaked out. And so just out loud, I said, "What is going on? Can somebody please tell me what's going on?" And that night, and what looked like an angel, long hair, you had the flowy gown. It kind of faded in, and the garment was flowing as if there was a breeze, but there wasn't. I was in my bedroom, and it was just showed up, and then it called my name. I thought it was a woman at first. It had this long hair and like this sort of feminine garb, if you will. And then it spoke my name, Donna, but it said it so loud and in such a deep voice that I'm like, oh my God, it's male. And then it faded, it flew away from me, kind of faded away and moved away from me. So that was another weird thing, but kind of cool, I have to admit. So I also had an out-of-body experience. Actually, I think it happened shortly after the last thing I just mentioned with the angel. So I was in New York, and I was in massage therapy school, and I'd sold my home, and I was living in an apartment. And the bedroom in that apartment had a sliding glass door, which went out to a lovely little patio area. And all of a sudden, though, at night, amazing how many of these things happen at night, but not all of them. But this was nighttime. I'm in bed. I'm just laying there getting ready to go to sleep. And this bright light shone in through the sliding glass door. And I heard like a humming noise. I could feel energy all around. And next thing I know, a part of me that's not physical, that's energetic in nature, I guess you would say, lifted out of me and was able to look all around the room. And of course, I was scared to death. I didn't know what was going on, and boom, it went right back inside of me. But that was a pretty profound lesson. What that taught me is that we are way more than our physical bodies, and that likely after we pass away, there's a part of us that does live on, that's energetic in nature. So that was a pretty important lesson, I thought. Some difficult things that I've noticed about being an experiencer, other than sometimes the giggle factor that I still get a little bit of, or people kind of looking at me disbelievingly, like, "Are you for real?" Well, yeah, I am for real. The first one, and the first person I actually experienced this with was sadly my ex-husband. So I was actually married for 30 years. And when I started, It was actually a little before that, like 28-ish years, because then COVID hit and it took a while for our divorce to be finalized. But when you are an experiencer and you are growing in your consciousness, so you're developing a higher level of awareness and consciousness, it can't help but change you. It's just going to change you. It doesn't mean that you are any better than anybody else around you. We're all we're all changing at this point because there's so much energy pouring into the planet now, as I'm sure many of you have probably heard at this point, and it really is impacting us. It's impacting us at our DNA level. So it's going to change you as a human being, and some relationships are not going to hold up, unfortunately, and so. That's hard. That's hard because if you're a sensitive person, if you love people, the last thing you want to do is have, relationships not work out. That's a hard thing to go through. So that's happened with about, I guess, 3 people in my life, which is probably not too bad considering that I've been going through this now for about 12 years. So that's actually pretty good, I think. But still, it's difficult. It hurts. Nobody wants to lose relationships, but people change, and I understand that. Really, it's based in science. It's just differences in resonance, and we're all equal. Just because one person is ascending at a more rapid rate than somebody else does not make that person any better. We're all equal. The universe is. The universe looks at everybody as equal, and they're very big into equanimity and unconditional love, which clearly for us humans on the earth today, in today's world, in our society, unconditional love it's tough. I mean, it's a tough one. I think probably for most people, the closest thing that we could equate to unconditional love would be that of our children, the love we feel for our children and for our beloved pets as well. But I have to tell you that I've received so much unconditional love from the divine realm, and this is something I'm absolutely working on. I mean, I think I'm coming along pretty well, but it's hard. It's probably been the hardest lesson so far for me personally. And the second thing that's difficult with regard to growing in higher dimensional consciousness and awareness is really adapting to channeling, to being able to receive messages and give messages, what that sounds like inside one's head. In the beginning, I was so caught off guard by this. I had no idea any of this was going to happen. I had not a clue. I mean, I knew nothing about this stuff. And I did have an interest in extraterrestrials, and I'm sure that was based on some earlier experiences I had, but that will be for another video. That's a whole separate topic. When I was about 4 years old. But, when you're first going through transitioning into being able to channel, for me at least, I didn't know anybody that had gone through this. I didn't know anything about it. So, of course, I have a degree in psychology. In college, I majored in psychology. So guess what? I thought I was experiencing psychosis because I was hearing things. I was also seeing some things too. These were at different dimensions. So, I had to go through and learn this just on my own. I got thrown in the deep end. I didn't know anything about this stuff. But there is a difference between being an experiencer and appearing to have psychosis, and someone who is actually mentally ill and suffers from, for example, bipolar disorder or schizophrenia. Folks with, severe mental illnesses, they will have trouble holding down a job. They will have trouble, in some instances, completing tasks, functioning, at higher levels. They will have had a great number of relationships which were very negatively impacted, lose many friends over time, severe problems inside of families. and all of this for somebody who's very severely mentally ill, they will have had these things happen for approximately at least half of their life, of course, depending on their age or more. That of course would discount somebody that's just starting to experience true mental illness, but really and truly, I'm talking about people who are in and out of mental hospitals, those types of situations, versus an experiencer who is adapting to higher levels of dimensional, consciousness awareness. It's ascending to higher levels of consciousness. It's if you weren't expecting it, didn't know anything about it, it can be pretty terrifying. Actually, for me, I was really afraid. I didn't know what I thought. I thought I was very sick, and it just turned out that it was, part of all of this, but I didn't know it at the time. So, another thing, experiencers do tend to have a strong service to others mentality as opposed to service to self mentality. Experiencers are often willing to help other people. Of course, just like everybody else, they have limits on what they're able to do. The difference is that they will often go out of their way, if they possibly can, to assist someone else, if they're reasonably able to do so. Another thing is that, after you've gone through such rapid transformation, and after many years of it, it can tend to make a person, I should say, a little less tolerant of ambiguity, especially, with regard to things that are very important. And so they will often pay great attention to detail, and shy away from not looking before leaping. In other words, they want to understand everything about a situation. If it's something really important, they're going to pay even more attention to detail. It's because I don't know how else to say it, except I think this has to do with, you just kind of grow up more. You're just at a different level of being overall. You just function at a much higher level. There's a lot of ethics. You feel bound to a very high standard of ethics. It impacts every area of one's life. At least that's been my experience. And experiencers are often, but not always, but very often, do dedicate themselves, if not full-time, at least part-time, to helping humanity. Those who make it their career put in long, solitary hours of research, study, writing, channeling, creating videos. And there are some who are sort of strangely, almost magically, greatly rewarded, very generously rewarded by the divine realm. I've experienced that. But the lonely aspect, the loneliness of the existence, is very real. And I'm not the only person that's mentioned this on camera, if you will. I definitely I've heard David Wilcock mention this at least a couple of times, if not more, because it does. It's you can't just talk to anybody. You can't just have like any friend over if they're not into it. You can still love them and be friends with them, but it's hard. It can be harder for them to relate to you, even though you can relate with them because you were at their level of consciousness once upon a time, but they're not at your level of consciousness. Or sometimes they could be higher, I guess, if they're further along. But my experience has usually been the other way around, where they're not quite at the same level of consciousness and awareness. So, it's such a huge topic that it does take a lot of time, a lot of research, a lot of study, a lot of self-reflection. And learning to channel, by the way, that's big. I mean, it takes up a lot of energy. So I just wanted to share with everybody what it's really like to be an experiencer. There's a lot of beauty in it, from the dancing lights in the sky and the beautiful, encouraging messages from like the Angelics. There's surprising moments like, hearing from a mantis being an insectoid, to seeing strange objects that, something that looked like a speaker in my bedroom, to feeling footsteps above my head in my bed. Nobody's in the room, but I feel it go right behind my head, even on the pillow and across the bed, just bizarre things. But you know what? I wouldn't trade it for anything. And I do think that the topic of ascension in terms of consciousness, a higher level of consciousness, and understanding that we are not alone in the universe, that there really are other beings who are physical, some are energetic in nature. But clearly, there are extraterrestrials, there are other entities. We are not alone. We are being supported and guided. A lot of people talk about the technology from ET. For example, crashes where craft, like saucers, discs, things have crashed, and we've back engineered technology and the things that have come out of that. And yes, the technology is wonderful. I always believe it's important to use it for the right reasons, for benevolent reasons, to help humanity. We are entering a time, I know, where 0 point energy it's not really that far away. And it's going to be a big transition. And there are going to be those who are going to have to change their business models, or their businesses will no longer be relevant as we move forward. And that's just a sign of the times of moving forward. There's no judgment here. It's just times are changing, and we are becoming a spacefaring race. And it's important that our consciousness reflects that. And our consciousness needs to be equal with where we are technologically speaking. And right now, the technology is here, the consciousness is here, but it is going up. It's going up. But we need to get both of them up and move on, so we can clean up the earth, and so we can improve our relationships and have better quality of life. My understanding is that we are really in the beginnings of a golden age at this point. It doesn't seem like it, I think, for a lot of people, which is understandable, because there's a lot of, a lot of chaos and change in the world. There's still, we still see war, and we still see people divided, and bitterness and anger and all kinds of things. But this is just like an adolescent, or even a terrible two sort of tantrum, if you will. We have to move beyond this phase so we can then go out into the cosmos and be welcomed amongst, other star beings. So this is a very important, to me, it feels like a quantum leap. That's how I experience all of this inside of me, with the channeling and with the change that has come about in me. It feels like a quantum leap in my development. I don't know if other people experience it to that level, if they feel that, but I do. And I definitely think that as more people ascend in consciousness, that it's going to be good for the planet and the rest of the universe. So anyway, thank you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate it. And again, my name is Donna M Atwood, and I am the founder of SEEN, the Spiritual and Extraterrestrial Experiencers Network. Thank you, and take care. Bye-bye.